Hello guys, good morning. Now, my name is Santosh Mehra. You can see right up there. So you can see my name. Now, I'm a qualified chartered accountant. I will be taking up the topic of financial reporting for you. Now, this concept of financial reporting, we will come to it. But fundamentally, let's understand that all those people who are viewing this video are successful in clearing your CA inter or your IPC level so far. Now, from here starts your challenge for preparing your mind for your CA final. Now, it is not significantly different from something which you have already done in your CA inter or in your IPCC level. But however, you need to understand that someone who is relating your accounting with financial reporting, the first thing I will put a brakes to you. Accounting was a pure practical paper which had only an element of theory in it. On the other way around, if I talk about a concept like financial reporting, which is your first paper of your CA final, I would say this is 70% theory, 30% practical. So, am I looking at another theory paper like law or audit or any other subject? Absolutely no. That is where CA financial reporting stands out. It stands out because this is a theory paper which requires a student to have a practical application of the topic. So that means whenever we deal with financial reporting, you're not going to mug up the standard. No mugging up the standard, no trying to by heart the standard completely. Not at all necessary. As far as your CA final financial reporting is concerned, the member who is testing you or the question paper examiner who's going to test you is only going to test you on your practical expertise of the topic. That means your application of the concept is necessary. I don't have to remember is and an of the paragraph, not at all necessary. Only its practical application is what you need to remember. So this is the first foremost thing that I will drive on your CA final perspective. In your CA final, please do not relate your accounting topic of your CA inter to your financial reporting topic of your CA final. They are quite distinct from each other. One is where you've done accounting in your CA inter, which was a 70 to 80% practical paper. But on the other hand, when you look at CA final financial reporting, you will find that this topic is 70 to 80% theory based. Yes, are there practical problems in it? Ample problems are available, but only thing that you have to remember here is you will be coming across this paper as a significantly a theory paper and very little on the practical side. But when I said theory, no mugging up of the concept. All that he'll require you to do is practically apply that paragraph, and that is sufficient. Practical application is what is being tested. Now, the question will be, what should I expect from this topic? What is my expectation from this topic? What should I expect from these videos which you will gonna view from here? Remember guys, our expectation from this topic or from this paper will be absolutely based on how the past exams have been held. Along with that, we will have a significant amount of practical examples which will be considered. Now, I am a diploma in IFRS and I have held or I have dealt with multiple companies in their transition from your IGAP, which was earlier there, or whatever you have studied as per your accounting standards earlier, AS1 to AS29. So those companies which were earlier handling AS1 to AS29, their transition into IND AS, I have dealt with. In total, I have dealt with about 17 companies which had an IFRS application or your IND AS application. This application predominantly started only in the year 2015 onwards, and today we are standing in 2021. 6 years passed by. Now, throughout the 6 years, there's a significant developments which have happened. New standards got added, certain earlier standards got deleted. So a lot of happening is around as far as your IND AS is concerned. We have new standards like IND AS 115, 116, which are basically revenue recognition and lease standards, which have come in replacing the earlier standards. So this aspect of your account, your IND AS is not like your earlier standards. Earlier standards were static. there was no significant improvement in the concept. But here, under IND AS, we have been evidencing in the last couple of years significant amount of changes which have been developed. Now, my expectation from this topic is exactly to deal with what is available as far as your syllabus is concerned. Is your syllabus covering the entire IND AS? No. It covers only 90% of the IND AS. There's about 10% of the IND AS which is not dealt under your syllabus. I will name them, but I'm not going to discuss about them. Someone is interested in knowing those standards, you can very well have a download of those standards from your MCA portal or from your ICA portal. You can definitely read it. They're simple standards, but they have been excluded from your syllabus. Now, let's see what is the expectation of the examiner when you're approaching this paper. I would say that this paper is probably the most important paper. I'll tell you why. Now you will say every faculty is going to say the same thing about each of their subject. Absolutely right. But however, from my perspective, I will consider this as a little more important because this will be the first paper that you will be handling after your CA inter-examinations. The CA inter-examinations, probably after 2.5 years, at least after your CA inter-exams, you will be approaching your CA final exam. Significant amount of gap. After a good gap where you have undergone a practical training under a qualified chartered accountant, once again coming back to your books, sticking to your books, right back from your office and then writing an exam itself is a difficult task. Because you have got used to the office pattern over the last couple of years, and now if I am basically looking at coming back in the form of an exam pattern, it might sound a little bit difficult. Number two, the other important point which I want to drive is, just give me a second. So, yes guys, sorry for the interruption. So when I'm talking about your CA final paper, as far as financial reporting, I'll consider it as important because it's the first paper. In a particular group of 4 papers that you're going to approach, if the first paper is a super hit, then you will carry an enormous amount of confidence moving forward into your subsequent exams. Enormous amount of confidence. But if you basically not been able to crack the first paper to your satisfaction, because results are only known after a particular period of time. But after you come out of the exam, there happens to be a confidence that I have done this exam really well. Now, if you lack this particular confidence, then that will be one of the biggest problem that you might get. So that is the reason why I would consider your CA final financial reporting to be one of the very important papers. Now, let's see what exactly is discussed as a part of your syllabus. Now, when we are looking at our syllabus, guys, once again, when we are looking at our syllabus, guys, the first thing that you need to understand that this standard or this particular paper is going to cover every IND AS possible. It is only revolving around IND AS. So your earlier accounting standards which you have dealt earlier, these are no longer required. So our understanding is completely based on IND AS. Sir, IND AS is quite different from your accounting standards. Yes and no. Few standards are significantly different. If you compare your AS9 revenue recognition standard with your IND AS 115, which is also a revenue standard, you will observe significant amount of differences. If you look at a standard like AS10, which dealt with property, plant and equipment or fixed assets, compared with IND AS 116, you will find that it is about 60 to 70% similar, 30% there do exist certain differences. If you look at leases which you have covered as per your AS17 and compare with the IND AS 116, then you AS19 compared with your IND AS 116, you will come across significant amount of differences. Only 50% of the topics are common. But however, if you come up with topics like cash flow statement, it is significantly same. If you come across operating segments, significantly same. If you come across something like EPS, significantly the same standard. So the standards are the same in certain ways, but also have typically a different angle or might be completely new to us when we are coming to Ind AS. Now, let's have this topic first of all. What is this financial reporting? What am I talking about? What is the discussion going for? Guys, always remember, guys, before we learn something, first of all, we should know what we are learning. Before we learn something, it is important to know what you're learning. So, as far as CA final first paper 1 financial reporting is concerned, what are you people going to learn now? The thing that we'll be learning as a part of your financial reporting paper is basically certain amount of Ind AS. Your Ind AS, when I talk about, we will have something like this. Broadly classification, a broad amount of classification I'll put into. The first set of standards are Ind AS, which are related to assets. First topic that we will start with is all your Ind AS which are related to assets. What Ind AS are related to assets? The Ind AS which is related to assets are, number 1, Ind AS 16, the primary standard. Number 2, Ind AS 38, again another very primary standard. Number 3, Ind AS 40. These 3 standards are significantly having similar paragraphs but deal with different concepts. What concepts do they deal with? 16 deals with property, plant and equipment. It deals with property, plant and equipment. This is the first standard that it deals with, and one of the very, very important standard because it forms the basis for the other 2 standards, Ind AS 38 and Ind AS 40. What does your Ind AS 38 and 40 deal with? 38 deals with intangible assets, while your 40 deals with investment property. Investment property. Remember guys, when I talk about Ind AS 16, 38 and 40, you might start somewhere relating to your accounting standards. If you start relating to your accounting standards, then let me tell you, you would have related this to your AS 10, which you dealt as per your accounting standard. Intangible assets, you would have related it to AS 26. Absolutely right. But however, corresponding to investment property, there is no particular standard at all. There is no standard which is comparable to your investment property because this standard happens to be a completely new standard. However, it will draw a lot of its parallels from Ind AS 16 and 38, but there is no corresponding standard in your accounting standards per se. That is not all for your assets. We'll also deal with Ind AS 2, which you might have guessed is nothing but your inventories. Yes, very similar to your AS 2 as well. No significant differences as far as inventory is concerned. Then I'll go into the next concept of Ind AS 116, which is nothing but your leases. Significantly different but common to the extent of one lease, which is finance lease. Next, going into concept number 6, Ind AS 36, which deals with impairment of assets. Again, this is not new. It was already there even under accounting standards as well. So somewhere similar. Let me write the comparable standards. Ind AS 2, I think you have already identified this as comparable to AS 2. leases comparable to your AS 19, but though they are not the same, there's significant amount of difference. I'm just writing comparable standards. Impairment under AS 28, very common to your IND AS 36 as well, to the extent they do work on a similar lines, but they are different in their own ways. I'll introduce a very important and genuinely a very new standard. This standard is very new. There is no corresponding standard in your accounting standards, and this deals with non-current assets held for sale, continuation, and discontinued operations. Non-current assets held for sale and discontinued operations. Now guys, there is no corresponding standard to your non-current assets held for sale, but there is a corresponding standard only to this part of discontinued operations, which in your AS 24 has been dealt as discontinuing operation. Only to the extent of discontinued operation, I have a corresponding standard, but please understand that there is no corresponding standard as far as your non-current assets held for sale is concerned. Non-current assets held for sale is pretty much a new standard, has never been dealt under any other earlier standards. Clear? One more very similar standard which does relate to the assets, which also has a corresponding standard under AS, is your IND AS 23. Very similar to your accounting standard, which is AS 16. What was AS 16 talking about? Very important standard from your CA inter perspective also, because it was dealing with something called as borrowing cost. Guys, this is more or less similar to what we have dealt under AS 16, but I wouldn't say that it is exactly the same. There are certain changes which you should know, but at the same time, it is not completely an alien standard to us. It is not Greek and Latin. It is very much English, which you have already dealt under your CA intern. These 8 standards which I have named here are the standards which relate to assets. The first and the primary point of our discussion will be around this standard, which deals with IND AS 16, 38, 40, 2, 116, 36, 105 and 20. These are the 8 standards. Moving forward. Now that we have seen assets, let's look at liabilities as well. IND AS relating to liabilities. Guys, if you remember, even among your accounting standards, there were very limited accounting standards which are dealing with liabilities. Similar is the case even with IND AS. Liabilities, very few standards are applicable, and to name only 2 standards are applicable to liabilities. One standard is IND AS 19 and the other standard is IND AS 37. Both the standards have a corresponding previous accounting standards as well, AS as well. This was AS 15 corresponding to IND AS 19, and this was AS 29 which was relating to IND AS 37. So now you might have guessed what is the name. IND AS 19, which is AS 15, deals with employee benefits. I don't know if you have covered it earlier or not under AS 15, but this happens to be one of the very important standards under the IND AS. 37, similar is the name under AS 29 as well. Provisions, contingent assets and contingent liabilities. contingent assets and contingent liabilities, which is your IND AS 37. So these are the two standards which relate to your liabilities. These two standards are not new to us. These names we have already dealt with even under AS as well. Whether you read those standards or not, irrespective, we will make sure that we understand these two standards very much, because these two standards happen to be one of the very important standards, especially when I discuss about IND AS 19. Employee benefits by itself is a very important standard. Regular questions have been arising from it, even when we had an AS 15 applicable, even when there is an IND AS 19 applicable, you come across that this standard has been significantly tested as far as your exam is concerned. Clear? Now, once we are done with assets and liabilities, then we'll have to learn about certain very important aspects which deal with items in financial statements. IND AS on items which impact or impacting financial statements. IND AS on items which impact financial statements. What are these items which impact financial statements? These standards which impact financial statements are broadly classified only into two items. One such standard is called as IND AS 12. Other one is called as IND AS 21. Both these standards had a corresponding accounting standard before, which was nothing but AS 22, one of the very important standards even under accounting standards, and one of the very common standard AS 11. Your IND AS 12 dealt with income tax, just as your AS 22. It was actually accounting for taxes on income dealt under AS 22, but it will be known as income tax under IND AS 12. Name change, but topic more or less the same, but approach completely different. There is nothing which is similar to AS 22 and IND AS 12, because the approach in identifying the item which impacts the financial statement itself is different. The approach itself is different. However, your IND AS 21 and AS 11, somewhere I would say 90% are going in line with each other. 90% they'll go in line with each other. A little bit of addition is there as far as IND AS 21 is concerned. IND AS 21 deals with effects for changes in foreign exchange rates. Exchange rates change on a daily basis. So that is discussed. The effect of those changes on its impact on the financial statements discussed as far as IND AS 21 is concerned. You can compare this to your AS 11, 90% is the same. Now, once we are done with this, we will have to go into presentation standards, disclosure standards. These two are very, very important standards. IND AS relating to presentation of financial statements. How the financial statements or certain aspects of financial statements are presented are also discussed. Guys, predominantly presentation of financial statements should be discussed as per the statute. Like Schedule 3 of Companies Act, it deals with presentation of financial statements. But however, IND AS also has a certain standards which correspondingly relate to presentation of financial statements. What are these IND AS? IND AS 1, the name itself is presentation of financial statements. Ind AS 34 and Ind AS 7. All three have corresponding standards according to ICAI, but I will differ. I'll tell you why. Ind AS 1 deals with presentation of financial statements. This standard, presentation of financial statements, will give a minimum requirements of any enterprise to present in its financial statements. Presentation of financial statements. This standard prescribes minimum requirements. The bare minimum things that you want to present or that you expect in the financial statements is given under Ind AS 1. That is minimum requirement. But remember, Schedule 3 of Companies Act will always prevail over this particular standard Ind AS 1. Ind AS 34 deals with interim financial statements. Ind AS 7 deals with cash flow statement, which is also a part of your financial statements. Guys, the corresponding accounting standards, I can write AS3 here, cash flow statement. I can write AS25 here as far as interim financial statements is concerned. I am forced to write AS1. But according to me, AS1 is not a comparable standard. According to me, AS1 is not a comparable standard. Reason very simple, guys. Reason is that AS1 predominantly deals with disclosure of accounting policies. It is only disclosure of accounting policies that we have to look at as far as AS1 is concerned. But if you look at this part of Ind AS 1, it deals with presentation of financial statements. Now guys, disclosure of accounting policies is only a small part of your financial statements. Ind AS 1 has a much larger ambit. It has a much larger ambit than what you are talking about as far as your AS1 is concerned. So remember guys that this standard, though I am forced to write it is a comparable to your AS1, but I would not really compare it because it is significantly different. Clear? Now let's move into disclosure. What about the disclosure standard? Ind AS relating to disclosures. Guys, disclosures is an essential element of financial statements, right? Now guys, when I talk about disclosures which are the Ind AS which relates to the disclosures, then let me put it like this. Certain disclosures which are dealt under your accounting standards are predominantly given like this. Your Ind AS 108, which is having a comparative standard. I will talk about it. Ind AS 24. And finally, Ind AS 33. What is your 108 dealing with? What is your 24 dealing with? And 33 dealing with? All the three standards have a corresponding standard under your accounting standard and more or less they are similar. AS 17, which earlier we called it as segment reporting. Now I will call it with the name as operating segments. Name change, little bit of a change as far as the standard is concerned. But however, predominantly it will remain the same. It was segment reporting under AS 17. I am calling it as operating segments under Ind AS 108. AS 24 deals with related party disclosures. Related party disclosures. Your corresponding standard under your accounting standards is AS 18. Ind AS 33 corresponding standard under AS is your AS 20, which deals with earnings per share or your EPS. Guys, this is where under these standards, these three standards which deal with disclosures, you will find that very few changes have been applied. Very few changes have actually occurred as far as your Ind AS is concerned. You might say, sir, AS 17 name itself you changed it. Yes, name I changed. But as far as reporting the segments is concerned, the reporting framework will remain the same. There is no significant difference as far as the reporting framework is concerned. The disclosures also predominantly remain the same. Definitions related to related party might change, but the disclosures will predominantly relate the same. Clear? So these standards have not undergone a significant change. There is no significant change there. Let's get into the other standards. We will deal with Ind AS 20. Corresponding to this standard, accounting standard does appear, which is nothing but your AS 12, which is nothing but your government grants, but a slight change is there as far as the name is concerned, because it talks about accounting for government grant, which is very similar to AS 12. Accounting for government grants, and additional, it talks about disclosure of government assistance. This is the only change as far as the standard is concerned. However, approach also is significantly different, but you can compare it to AS 12, but there is nothing to be compared because there is a significant different approach which will apply even to your accounting as well. So accounting for government grants and disclosure of government assistance. Now this standard you can compare to AS 12, but significant difference as far as your approach is concerned. Now, if I move further, one second guys. Yes guys, so significant other standards that we'll have to look at. Ind AS 115. One of the most important standards that you will come across, it deals with revenue from contracts with customer. Guys, you might confuse with it and you might say that this is so simple, as similar as AS 9 is concerned. Absolutely wrong. There is a significant change as far as your revenue recognition is concerned. There is a complete different approach that we will follow in Ind AS 115. One of the most important standards. Don't be afraid, even if we have a 9 to 10 hours of discussion only about this topic. 9 to 10 hours of discussion goes into revenue recognition. That is how small of a things Ind AS 115 discusses about. Every small, minute thing is discussed as a part of your topic, your Ind AS 115. It talks also about service concession agreements. We will also discuss about it. I wouldn't say it is comparable, but if you want to compare from any accounting standard, then it is AS 9. AS 9 is a simple 2.5 page standard. Ind AS 115 on the contrary, including all the annexures, is about 83 or 84 sites. So where is 2.5, where is 83, 84? You need to understand. That is how depth Ind AS 115 goes into as far as your revenue recognition is concerned. Clear? Now, we will look at furthermore standards as well. We will talk about Ind AS 101. Under other standards, I will talk about Ind AS 101. It's a peculiar standard, guys. I'll give the name. You will tell me what is the corresponding standard in AS. First time adoption of Ind AS. Like you might have already guessed, there is nothing such standard which existed under AS, because it's a first time adoption of AS. That is a transition which happens from your earlier set of accounting standards into your Ind AS. If an enterprise is adopting or if an enterprise is transiting, then the exemptions or certain relaxations which are applicable are contained under Ind AS 101. Clear? Ind AS 101 is a peculiar standard. Please make sure that you people have a good understanding of 101, because 101 is the first standard which I will apply to any enterprise which is undergoing a transition to your Ind AS. Similarly, I will come across another standard called as 114. This 114 standard deals with regulatory deferral accounts. Deals with regulatory deferral accounts. This standard obviously does not have a corresponding Ind AS, but remember, this is no longer included in your portion as well. You no longer have to discuss about Ind AS 114 because it is excluded specifically from your syllabus. Ind AS 114 dealing with regulatory deferral accounts has no application as far as your syllabus is concerned, but this standard does apply to certain enterprises. I dealt with a company which deals with regulatory deferral accounts, so do not eliminate the standard for practical experience purposes. Syllabus excluded. But if you want to understand Ind AS perfectly, then somewhere at some point of time in your life, you will come across the standard called as regulatory deferral accounts, which you have to deal with under Ind AS 114. It's only excluded from the syllabus. That's it. Is excluded from syllabus. Okay. Similarly, we have few more standards coming up. Industry specific Ind AS. Industry specific Ind AS. What is this industry specific Ind AS? Certain Ind AS are only applicable to specific industries. They don't apply to every enterprise as a whole. What standards do I come across here? I will come across Ind AS 41. I will also come across Ind AS 104. I will also come across Ind AS 106. 41 deals with agriculture. It deals with agriculture. Ind AS 104 deals with insurance contracts. While your 106 will deal with exploration of minerals or mineral rights. There is no corresponding accounting standard in all the three of them. But however, 104 and 106 have been excluded from your syllabus. It is specifically excluded from syllabus, so you don't have to deal with these standards. Now let's number and check how many standards have we covered so far. Am I trying to say that this is the end of the list? Absolutely no. I'll give few more to be included in the list. But until now, check how many standards have we included in our syllabus so far. So 10 standards which related to assets and liabilities. Your number 11 and 12 deals with items affecting financial statements. Presentation related standards, we have 3, which is nothing but 13, 14 and 15. Then we had disclosure related standards, 3 standards, which is 16, 17 and 18. Then we had other standards, 19, 20 and 21. Similarly, we had IND AS specific standards, out of which only 1 is applicable. 22 standards we have seen so far is applicable as far as your portion is concerned. 3 standards I've excluded. So if you include even those 3 standards, 25, but syllabus covers 22 standards so far. From here, I will talk about certain standards which have a lot more practical application than theory part. These 22 standards, I will say 70 to 75% is theory, 20 to 25% we will solve problems which is a practical understanding or practical application of the theory. But apart from this 22, we will come across the next set of standards where you will have 75% of practical application, 25% of theory. What are these standards? Standards relating to financial instruments, mark my words guys, there is no paper without this particular standard being tested. No question paper has ever come up, it will never come up. This standard is compulsory to appear in any question paper and it deals with 3 standards. IND AS 32 deals with 109 and 107. 32 deals with definitions of financial instrument. 109 deals with classification. Measurement. Recognition and derecognition. Recognition and derecognition. 107 deals with disclosures relating to financial instruments. 107 is the least important of all. 109 is the most important of all. 107 is least important of all. 109 is the most important of all. So these 3 standards do not have any earlier accounting standard. At a point of time they came in 30, 31 and 32. But significant difference is there. They have been withdrawn later on by ICAI. So they are no longer available. I cannot compare them with any accounting standards which is applicable as on today's date. Next set of standards are standards relating to group companies. Group company is nothing but subsidiaries, joint ventures and associates. Here I will come across AS 27, IND AS 27, IND AS 28, IND AS 110 IND AS 111, and I will also deal with IND AS 112. '27 deals with separate financial statements. '28 deals with accounting for investments, for investment in associates and joint ventures. '110 deals with consolidation with subsidiary. '111 deals with joint arrangements. And 112 finally deals with disclosure of interest in other entities. Disclosure of interest in other entities. Now you will say 5 standards, and that too only relating to consolidation. How important is this topic? This topic, again, I would say no question paper will come up without this topic, but the weightage has significantly come down in the recent times. You only find about 8 to 16 marks of weightage on this. Earlier it was much higher than that, but right now you find 8, 10, 12, 16 maximum until there. But these topics are dealt in depth. About 28 to 30 hours of discussion goes only into these topics. Now, what is a comparable accounting standard then? Comparable accounting standards, here I can compare AS 21 and here I can compare AS 23. AS 27, which dealt with joint venture, is no longer available as far as your IND AS is concerned. If you want, you can compare it, but there is no corresponding IND AS at all. So that AS 27 treatment of consolidation as per proportionate consolidation method, that method itself is scrapped off. So that is a significant difference from accounting standard to your IND AS out there. So this is standards which relate to group enterprise or group companies. 2 more standards that we'll deal with. 2 more standards that we'll deal with. One standard is IND AS 103. Final standard is IND AS 102. 103 deals with business combination, which I wouldn't say you're wrong if you compare it with AS 14. You can compare it with AS 14, which dealt with amalgamations, absorptions and reconstructions. You can compare it, but not absolutely right. You cannot say that it is absolutely right. 102 deals with share-based payments. Guys, there is no particular accounting standard under previous ICAP which you can compare it with IND AS 102. Earlier, your share-based payments was a part of a guidance note for ESOPs to employees. Employee stock option plan was there. Now it has become share-based payments, much larger ambit, has been given a separate standard IND AS 102. Now, few IND AS, we did not have a corresponding accounting standard. But remember, few accounting standards also do not have a corresponding IND AS. Few accounting standards do not have a corresponding IND AS. Your AS 13, which dealt with investments. Your AS 13, which dealt with investments, does not have another corresponding standard. Clear? Because that standard investments has got now merged with financial instruments which you are dealing as per Ind AS 32, 107 and 109. There is no corresponding standard to that. Your Ind AS 5, your AS 5, which deals with net profit or loss for the period, also is not applicable. It is also not applicable. Clear? No Ind AS is corresponding to that accounting standard 5. I'll give you a few more standards. Oh wait, let me number so far so that we are not losing a track of it. 22 so far till there. And from here, let's count it again. 23, 24, 25, which dealt with financial instruments, group companies, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30. Business combinations, 31. Share-based payments, 32. 3 standards eliminated. That will make it total 35. Syllabus, 32 so far. Not done yet. Not done yet. I will include certain miscellaneous standards. I wouldn't say that these are important, but one has to know these standards. They also had corresponding standards under accounting standards, and these Ind AS are Ind AS 8 and Ind AS 10. They are accounting policies and measurement related standards, guys. You can call it even with that heading, but I call them as miscellaneous standards. Ind AS 8 deals with accounting policies. Accounting policies, estimates, and errors. Somewhere you can relate it to your AS4 in part. AS5 in part. Events occurring after balance sheet date. Guys, if here you want to compare it, then I would say AS5 and also AS1 because it dealt with accounting policies. So definition of accounting policies, disclosure requirements, all those which were there under AS1 will now form part of Ind AS 8. Here, Ind AS 10 is a part of my AS4, which is nothing but contingencies and events occurring after balance sheet date. Contingencies we have merged it with Ind AS 37 or your AS 29. So I'm not talking about it. I'm only talking about events occurring after balance sheet date. So number it. This becomes 33. This becomes 34. So the total standards that we will be having as a part of your syllabus is total 34 standards. But actual number of standards which apply to the enterprises in general sense is 37. 3 standards, 104, 104, 106 are not applicable to us as far as our syllabus is concerned. So I'll exclude those standards. There is one more standard which does not apply to us, which is basically a standard which deals with hyperinflation. It is an Ind AS which deals with hyperinflation, which is Ind AS 39, which is not applicable to us. So it does not even apply to Indian enterprises because India is never under a hyperinflation situation. So if you include that, that will be 38 standards in total, but 34 is available or applicable as far as your syllabus is concerned. Now take a deep breath. Think about what did I say so far. Is it practically possible, sir? Is it practically possible that you are expecting me to remember 34 Ind AS? Guys, our task for the next 60 days or so, where we would be covering at least 200 hours of a session, is to make sure these topics are simple to you. These topics, we will try to make it as simple as possible. I already told you no mugging up. No mugging up because you don't have to by heart everything. All that you have to do is understand it and make sure that you are applying it. practical application of these IND AS is what really matters. Clear? So guys, I'm not scaring you upfront. I'm just telling you that this I will try to make. I'll put in 100% of effort to make these topics look as simple as possible to you. You are going there to write a 100-mark paper, and believe me, I will make sure that you will appear in the exam to write the entire 100 marks with ease. With ease. 100 marks you will read, you will anyways write it. But my guarantee is, I will make sure, my promise to you is, I will make sure that you people write this 100 marks or appear to the exam with ease.